ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. A few years ago, I was in Barcelona, Spain. From there, we traveled one day to visit Girona. It is a city nearby Barcelona that in the Middle Ages had a very important Jewish community with very important people who were outstanding. One of them was, for instance, Nachmanides. That's Ramban with an N as in November, different from Rambam that has an M as in Mary at the end. Rambam is Moses, the son of Maimon, and Nachmanides, Ramban, is Moses, the son of Nachman. But both were giants. This Ramban that came from Girona, he held a public debate with a convert, a Jewish convert to Christianity. His name was Pablo Cristiani. That was in the presence of King James I of Aragon. And Nachmanides came out really victorious from that. There were several questions that they had to answer, but that is not what I want to delve upon. This Ramban was more conservative than Rambam with an M, and he was not influenced by Greek philosophy and the Arab philosophers that brought to the attention of the rest of the world the works of these Greek philosophers. If we don't delve for a moment in something called the Mishneh Torah, which Maimonides wrote, which is an organized version of discussions in the Talmud that speak about the different laws that we have to live by, Ramban Nachmanides is actually just as big as Maimonides because he wrote many commentaries on the Torah, on the Talmud. He is very important to this very day. I quote Ramban because I want to show a difference of opinion that he has with Rashi. Rashi is the most important commentator on the Torah. Rashi starts the following in his commentary on the Torah. He says, actually, the Torah should not have started with Genesis, with the creation of the world. Why not? Because the Torah is actually a book of laws. It tells us what to do. What does it have to do with stories? It should start out with the first law, and the first law that the Jewish people received was HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is for you the first of all months. This is how you start counting the year, and that was the month of Nisan when the Jewish people left Egypt, as it is recorded in the book of Exodus, Shemot, in chapter 12. So Rashi has to answer, why does the Torah start with creation? So he says the following: this is to show that God, as creator of the universe, is actually the owner of the universe. And as an owner, he can adjudicate any part of the world to anybody he wants. And God decided to give the promised land, Israel, to the Jewish people. So in a sense, this is a Zionist proclamation, legitimating the reason why the Jewish people inherited the land of Israel. But Nachmanides, Ramban, is not satisfied with that answer. He says that actually the first narratives, the book of Genesis, is very important because we learn a lot from the behavior, from the circumstances, from the problems, from the solutions that these people gave to certain problems that they had. He says, starting with the first couple, Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, Cain and Abel, Noah, and the patriarchs, these are not unidimensional characters. They're not simple characters. They're very complex people, and they have successes and failures. They have good points, and maybe they have some things that they're lacking. He says that even those people that don't receive a very good grade are not appreciated in Jewish tradition also have positive aspects. He says, for instance, Cain, he killed his brother, murdered a quarter of the population of the world. At that time, the world consisted only of 4 people, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and he killed his brother Abel. Maybe Cain didn't know the effect of what he was doing. We see that God does not give him punishment by ordering that he be put to death for having put to death somebody else, because we're in the beginnings of history and we don't know yet the rules very specific in all their specificity. Cain is, on the other hand, a very active person. According to the Torah, he is the first person in building a city. And we know the importance of cities in the development of the human species. One of the grandchildren of Cain is the one that develops the idea of tents, that when you go with your flock to different places, you build a tent in order to protect yourself from animals or from any other danger in a different place. A second grandson is the one that creates a harp, a flute, music, is the creator of music. A third grandson is the one that mines copper and iron and makes instruments out of that. We see that the beginning of the development of civilization, in a sense, is through Cain, who was really a murderer. He killed his brother Abel. But we also see through the grandchildren of Cain that God created a world that needs perfecting. In other words, there are minerals that you can mine and afterwards transform them. In other words, man becomes the associate of God in the creation of this world. Comes to my mind what was said by the recently deceased great Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He said that the real question is not, why does God permit injustice in this world? The real question is, what are you doing to correct injustice in this world? Because the human being was created in order to participate in the continuous development of this world. The Torah says that in the beginning there wasn't anybody to work the land. In other words, man had not only the duty of caring for what there is, he also had to bring water to the trees. He also had to plant seeds in the earth so that new fruits should come forth in order to give sustainment to the human species and to the animals as well. In other words, man was not created only as a watchman. He was also created to be creative. According to the Talmud, there was a discussion between the Roman governor of Judea. His name was Tinius Rufus. He questioned Rabbi Akiva about Brit Milah, circumcision. He said the following: with what right do we cut part of an organ with which man was born? Why do we interfere with nature? So Rabbi Akiva said, do we really leave the earth in the same state that it is? Don't we work it? Don't we plant seeds? Don't we add water? Don't we watch over it? How do you eat bread? You know, in order to eat bread, you have to grow wheat. Then you have to go through a certain process. You have to convert it into flour, eventually bake it. And then finally you have bread. In other words, man uses nature and transforms it. Man has the duty of somehow becoming a partner in perfecting this world. Did God make a perfect world? Why do we get sick? Some people think that if you get sick, it's because God willed it so. The Amish people in the United States think so. I think they only accept the wheel. They use carriages with horses to this very day. They don't use automobiles. They don't build their houses the way we do. They use elementary instruments in order to build their houses because they think that science and technology is really the work of the devil. We should leave nature the way it is. Well, this is what they think, but we don't think so. We think that God gave us intelligence in order to find cure to sickness. Maybe sickness is an instrument. It is a catalyst for us to look how to solve problems. Who was Noah? Noah was not the descendant of Abel because Abel died. There was a third child that Adam had. His name was Seth. Noah is a descendant of Seth. However, the Midrash says that Naamah, his wife, was a descendant of Cain. In other words, that we are really, on the one hand, descendants of the third son of Adam, but we're also descendants of Cain. In other words, that we have this tendency maybe to be destructive, but also to be very creative. And we read, according to Ramban, very important stories about the relations of the patriarchs with their spouses, with their children, brothers, what the relationships among brothers is. There are laws in the Torah that can't anticipate everything, so that when we read the story according to Nachmanides, and this is why we start in Genesis, is because we learn many things, many of their traits that we should in some way follow as well. Obviously that the relationship between brothers comes to the forefront in the story of Jacob with the envy, rivalry between his sons. We also see that the relationship of each of the patriarchs is different with their spouses. Jacob falls in love with Rachel and is willing to work an additional 7 years for her because he was given Leah after working the first 7 years. And we see that Yitzchak is also in a certain way led by his wife Rivka, who understands the present very well. Maybe Yitzchak is concentrated too much in the future. In any event, the idea is the following. When you reread the stories of Genesis, of Bereshis, according to Ramban, it is not only a narrative in order to capture your attention. You're going to learn many things. And the fact that we reread it every year means that we understand it in a different way every time we reread it, because we ourselves, in our process of growing, we change. And the following year, when you read the same thing again, you understand it in a very different way.